June. They're not as bad as the worst, but they certainly weren't as good as their best, and their best just happened to be right before the All-Star break. So, you had to see it for what it is. This is about a 500 team.
That was the other huge surprise, is how many times have we seen basically a collapse in late August, September, and basically they just fall apart. But this year they kept on winning, and getting over 500, to me that's a major. I remember at the beginning of this season, the line in Vegas, I think, was 74 wins. 74 or 76?
73.5.
Oh, really?
Because that's where Ryan and I put our money on. We took the over.
Who won? Did you both?
Oh, yeah. We both took the over. It got to that point. We stood on one show too. Like it was a Sunday. It got to that point. I think on a Sunday, it went down to 73.5. And I told Ryan, I was like, I'm not a betting man, but I know Ryan might be a little bit. And I was like, send me to that site. We're putting some money on it. So yeah, we both put $100 on it.
Oh, nice.
Worked out in our favor.
I think my final guess was like 76 wins. So I guess I would have bet the over too, but I wasn't too. I expected, which almost did happen, that they won't look so good. They'll be out of contention, and they'll have their little, like you say, buy some, sell some, but mostly get rid of anybody with a high salary. So yeah, that's for all the naysayers, going 82 and 79 is still pretty impressive. But now on to next year. What do you see? What do you see the biggest need that they have to address this offseason?
I'll tell you what. That's kind of like a two-part question for me. So I'll start off with the biggest need. I think the biggest glaring need clearly is the middle infield. We have two people leaving, Jordy Mercer and Josh Harrison, which by no means are we, sad. That's not what's making the whole middle infield, but by all means, right? So, I mean, they're moving on, happy for what they did for, the team in the past and such. That's great. But at this point of their careers, at this point in time, that's not best for the Pirates' needs. So they're moving on. The issue is who's really there to replace them? I don't know. I mean, we saw Kevin Kramer. That didn't go too well. You saw Kevin Newman. That didn't go too well. Sure, Adam Frazier's there, but I've always felt more comfortable as Adam Frazier being like that utility player, much like how J-Hay was. I saw his defense. Now his defense has gotten better second base. So I don't know if they put him in there as this everyday second baseman, maybe not the worst thing in the world, but with Polanco being out for an extended period of time, I kind of look at Frazier being like that fill-in for right now, possibly, and like a utility guy when he comes back. So that way I would want like an everyday second and short going into the seasons. To me, that's the biggest glaring hole and need per se. But here's the second part, like how do they fill it? Well, I don't know, because when you look at the middle infielders out there in free agency, nothing really stands out. I mean, yeah, there's Machado. It's a pipe dream. Yeah, I would love Manny Machado on this team, but it's just not going to happen. You look at the other guys like Brian Dozier, who ultimately, I mean, if you talked a year ago, if the Pirates could get Brian Dozier, I would love it. But he's coming off a really horrific season. I know there was an injury in play, so maybe you're looking at like a rebound, but there's a lot of risk there, and he'll be 32 years old. So again, a lot of risk there. There's just not a whole lot of guys that you just feel comfortable plugging in and saying, we're good. We got him. Let's go. It's a lot of risk, and a lot of underwhelming performers. So it's like, I don't know if you really try to improve this team by improving the middle infield. If as weird as that sounds, and a lot of talks around Pittsburgh is going around because the offseason is what middle infield targets get. But it's like, do you just go get one because they're there if it doesn't really improve your club? I mean, maybe what this team needs to do is just build from a strength. And that's why today I tweeted out, we're going to talk about this on our show, more in depth, but maybe this team just goes out and targets relievers and maybe another starting pitcher and just builds upon the strength that they have. And it looks much like maybe the 2013 Pirates. As I joked, the 2013 Pirates had Gabby Sanchez, Clint Barmas, and Travis Snyder in their everyday lineup, and they won 94 games. So maybe that's just the answer. Maybe they kind of air quotes punt a middle infield, just get some bodies in there that are okay, but not try to go out there and win this in the offseason by middle infield, and just go and build upon their strengths and shorten that game. Have, remember the Shark Tank, right? That lockdown bullpen. I mean, they already have a really solid, bullpen as it is, so maybe build upon that, and maybe an addition of another starter pitcher or such. There's a lot of options, though. That's the thing. There's a lot of ways this team can approach the offseason.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, they got 0 free agents last year, so, and that drove people crazy. The people that think the Pirates are too cheap. It's like, oh, well, there was nobody out there. And I remember, and I'm sure you kept track of this, and so did I. There was, who was that pitcher that ended up going to Minnesota?
Lance Lynn.
Yep. There was
Alex Cobb to Baltimore.
Oh yeah, Alex Cobb.
Yep.
No matter who was out there that I thought, they should have got, they ended up being a disaster. And maybe Neil Huntington knew that. So yeah, they're not just going to make moves just for the sake of making moves. So yeah, we'll see. And yeah, maybe you have, like, you're right. Maybe you have a weakness in middle infield, but then you play that to a strength somewhere else. So it could still work. So yeah, it'll be really interesting. Another huge X factor is maybe Jung Ho Kong will be in the mix somehow.
Well, see, here's the thing when you're the Pirates, right? And any small market team. And that's why, and you're looking at the World Series now, the Red Sox and Dodgers, it's really no surprise that, the small markets have much of a disadvantage. And when it comes to me, free agency just really allows teams to make mistakes. They are afforded that opportunity. When the Cubs go out there and give almost $200 million to Jason Hayward, they can eat that because they can just print some more money and go find the other replacement. But when your team is the Pirates, you can't really make those mistakes. You just can't afford to go out there and spend almost $100 million on a player and then find out that they turn into a bust, because that's going to cripple your team. So, can the team add more payroll? Absolutely. Definitely on board with that, especially this upcoming year. But you can't just say we can make, we can sign more people. We have that money to do so and go out there and spend big. And then when that player turns out to be a bust, what do? You got to eat that contract. So teams like the Pirates, you kind of have to bank on a player like Jung Ho Kong coming back and maybe producing back to, his previous form, at least somewhat close to it, because at just $5.5 million, that's value, and we saw what Moran did at third, albeit he was about average, but that's what he is. He's about average. To be a playoff team, you have to find players that can be above average. So maybe Moran's more of a David Freese type, player right now. He fills in and plays first and third or whatever comfortably, but you have a guy like Jung Ho Kong playing third that can be, a game changer.
Yeah. Speaking of first, would you say Josh Bell was the biggest disappointment this year?
That's a great question. Biggest disappointment, that's a lot of pressure, because it's like the one player that's the biggest disappointment. I don't know if he really was. So was he disappointing? Yeah, but Josh Bell kind of had like a tale of two seasons also. His second half was much different. It seemed as he went away from trying to do that power stroke and went back to like his rookie season and just hitting the ball, making contact, high average, high on base, which I'll take if that's what he is. But I don't know. Biggest disappointment. That's tough. Maybe by default, because I guess
Moran was a bit of a disappointment.
Yeah.
Then what did you really expect?
I guess Well, yeah, I was gonna say, I guess it really goes to what your expectations were of him. I mean, I followed him actually up through, the Marlins when he got drafted. He never was a big power guy. I mean, he's always almost like what Josh Bell is now. He's a good contact, good hit tool, not much power. And then he found it somewhere, last year in AAA. I always felt like his floor is what he was right now. So could he exceed it and have a ceiling? Sure, but I think it's gonna be harder for him to reach a ceiling like that. But I don't know. I guess maybe by default, I guess Josh Bell, because it seemed as if every player was what you expected or probably did a little bit more. I mean, like Trevor Williams, Jameson Tyone, like most players took a step forward. Cervelli, most guys like took a step forward or was about what they are. So I don't know. I guess maybe by default he was.
Speaking of the pitching, would you say that was the strength of the team as a starting pitching? Well, really the pitching, almost the entire bullpen, the back of the bullpen and the starting pitching were just amazing. I don't think I've ever seen a staff end up being just pitching so well, the starting pitching.
Well, take a look back at the 2013 Pirates, as I mentioned earlier. Reminisce a bit. You'll see that and go, oh, wow, that was a solid staff. I mean, just everyone down the line. But I do agree. Was it a strength? Absolutely. And what I think is funny is, as you mentioned before the season, think about what the bullpen was. I mean, all the question marks. You knew Rivero at the time, because he was still called Rivero, was penciled in as the closer. But do you remember how George Contos was our setup man?
Oh, yeah.
Like, do you understand where this bullpen was at a point? That Contos was the setup man. And
what a disaster that was.
You had no idea what was coming in. And by the season's end, you were so confident that this bullpen could match up with any bullpen in Major League.
Not only was Contos bad, Kyle Crick started out horribly. Who was Michael Felice started horribly.
Well,
I think Rodriguez started horribly too. So I mean, yeah, they started out so bad, and it ended up being a strength of the team. But yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest surprises was Trevor Williams, who saw 14 wins, 3.11 ERA out of him.
If you're raising your hand, you're a liar.
Tyone, I understand.
No.
Tyone, yeah. I would believe that, but Trevor Williams, to me, that was. I mean, I remember, I play fantasy baseball, and I had Trevor Williams was out there for a long time. Even when he went on, won a few games, it's like, yeah, whatever, it's Trevor Williams. And then he just the rest of the year, he was just amazing.
Well, Joe, you were part of our North Shore 9 League, weren't you?
No.
Oh, well, next year
I better be in it next year.
Next year you are. That was a running joke. So I've done this last year and I did it this year because we do an auction league. So I nominate Pirates because, I mean, you're playing with a bunch of Pirate fans, so obviously they're probably going to overvalue them. So I just nominate Pirates every time and let them buy. And I go and get the value somewhere else, right? Well, I put Trevor Williams out there for $1. And I got stuck with him for $1. And I laugh about it. I was like, oh, I got Trevor Williams now. The best buck I ever spent in my life.
There you go.
Joke's on you guys now.
Yeah.
But I mean, and it's funny how you mentioned about, Cobb and Lance Lynn and stuff. And that's why I ran that tweet time and time again, comparing Trevor Williams to the 4 guys, Cobb, Lynn, Darvish, and Arrieta, because I was one to agree that, I mean, Trevor Williams is a starting pitcher. He belongs in a rotation. Now, albeit is it number 1 or 2? Absolutely not. But is he a number 4 or 5? Certainly. He gets innings. He has some quality stuff. I'm not shocked if that guy goes out there and pitches like for a season end, a 3.8, 3.9, hovering around a 4 ERA. But right. I mean, a 3.11? Trevor Williams? Yeah. Really? I'll take it. Don't expect that next year, though.
Yeah. Well, next year, I mean, even if they do nothing, they still have a pretty strong staff, and you have to figure Mitch Keller will be ready. In theory,
potentially,
maybe
that's the hope right now. The thing is, things can change, right? So you're saying that today, right? Which makes sense. You know, it makes sense that Keller's coming. It's a big time stud.